involved. We're going to be doing what's called the stock removal method. And by stock removal, what we mean is we take a piece of raw stock and we remove everything that we don't want until we've got what we want left behind. I've got a couple of pieces of equipment here. This is a 9-inch variable speed reversing disc grinder. And this is a 2x72-inch belt grinder. Now these are the two workhorses of the knife making world. Raise your hand if you have a 2x72 in your shop. Oh, leave them up, leave them up, leave them up. Okay, everybody who doesn't have your hand in the air, look around at the people who have their hands in the air. She's got one for sale. These come in a variety of different makes and models and configurations. This is the KMG. It's made by Beaumont Metalworks. I've made a couple of modifications to it, not major. I do make a lot of my own rests, my tool rests, because they are very limited in what they make for tool rests. And in knife making, you need a bunch of different rests to do things. We're going to start out the way every knife starts out, and if you do forged knives, is there anybody here who's forging knives? Okay. Everything you're going to see here today applies to forged knives as well, because this is all about finishing your knife and grinding your knife. So the way every knife starts out, at least for me, and the way it ought to start out for you, is with a drawing. And you should figure out what your finished product is going to look like. So the knife that we're going to make today is called a full tang, and for those of you who don't know the nomenclature, the tang is the part of the knife that goes into the handle. Normally you have a knife, kind of a blank, and you're used to seeing this shape here, and this being the tang that fits into the handle. Your guard goes here, and your handle goes over the back side of that. The full tang knife, the handle, the tang is the same shape as the handle. So you end up with a knife that's all one solid piece of steel and is shaped exactly like that, and you laminate a scale, a piece of handle material of whatever you want, over that and pin it to your handle and going and glue stuff together temporarily. This is great for doing it. You're also going to glue your paper to your disc. But then you just spray that on there, glue your template down to it. Now you can glue this right to your piece of metal if you want. However, when you're cutting your metal and you're grinding it to shape, the metal does get hot and the glue tends to delaminate. So I always make a wood template first, and then I make a metal template from my wood template. This is fairly easy to do. You can use a bandsaw, you can use a scroll saw, you can use a hand coping saw that you can buy for about $10 at Home Depot or Ace Hardware. A coping saw, for those of you who don't know, those and says, yeah, I really looks like that knife. Can you make that one again? Yeah, sure. I got a template sitting in the box for it. But then you're going to clamp this on down. I'm going to take a carbide tip scribe blade, and you're going to follow that template around. And that black Sharpie is going to give you a very bright contrast as your scribe cuts into this with a metal cutting bandsaw. Just wants this picture. Precision ground 01. No, this is a 154 cm. This is a stainless steel. You can buy this at a variety of different knife making supply houses. I've got a couple of catalogs over on the little round table there. One from K&G, Knife and Gun Finishing Supplies. They're right here in Arizona. There's another one over there from Jant Supply. There's a bunch of different knife-making supply houses out there. Another one I buy from a lot is called Texas Knife Maker Supply. They sell steel and handle materials and pin stock and guard materials and all kinds of stuff. everything you could possibly want for your knife. So what I would do is I'd put a layer of sand in the bottom of the box, drop that KO wool down on there, take that red hot knife, throw it in the KO wool, throw the other KO wool on top of it, fill the whole box up with sand, close the box, and set it aside and let it cool for a long time. It takes about 5 hours for that red hot. It's just 30 seconds when I'm ready to start grinding my knife. That's just the thickness that I like. This is a piece of 5/30 seconds precision ground stock. So I've made this little gizmo. You can buy center scribes for, I don't know, about $100 or so, or you can figure out in blacksmithing tradition how to make one. And what I did was I just took a piece of angle iron and a couple of pieces of square tube, and I made it so that I could take off a carbide tipped sawtooth off of a circular saw blade. I spot welded it to the side, or I just tack welded it onto the side there, and I make sure you get a nice sharp tooth, not one that's got a big chip out of it. When I got a couple of those, and one on each end, depending upon which way I'm going to be going, so that my bottom right on there, and I drop my tooth down onto the top, and I just set that at my center spot.
You can actually line up that last point.
You know, if you're a thousandth off, I mean, what's a thousandth of an inch between friends? And then I'm just going to run that, and if you really aren't going to be exactly where you want to be, because you never are, beautiful thing, you turn it over and you create 2 lines. And you end up with 2 lines, and you want to grind out 2 each line and leave that little center there. So I've got my center line scribe.
Is there a difference if you're making a left-handed knife?
No. Looks something like that. The flat grind looks just like a plain wedge, and the cannel grind or the apple seed grind is convex. And they're, for different things, we're going to be working on the flat grind right now. Now the KMG and your 2x72, a lot of them, you know, depending upon what motor you get, they're also variable speed. And there are a lot of places along here where you are going to be playing with the speed, but for the most part, you're going to be operating fairly toward the high end of the spectrum at around 90% of its drive.
What did you put on that belt before you started?
I'm sorry? What I put on? That was a little cleaner. I had used this belt to grind the masonite, so it had a lot of sawdust in there.
It's rubber.
And I was just pulling the sawdust out of it. So, there we go. We've got our chamfer. Now for this, I am going to get rid of this belt. And I'm going to put on a good one. A nice fresh one. I'm going to start out at 60 grit again. 60, 50, somewhere in the fairly rough range. But you probably don't need to go any coarser than a 50 grit.
Where are you getting your belts from?
Depends on how quickly I need them. But K&G making knife and gun finishing supplies up here in Arizona. I like ordering from them. They're a local business, and their stuff arrives tomorrow. I order it today, it arrives tomorrow. I order from Jance or from Texas. I gotta wait a couple of days for it to show up unless I want to pay extra for the shipping. But generally, a lot of these places will give you a bulk discount if you buy 10 or more belts. Some of them, they'll give you, it doesn't matter what grit it is, if you buy 10 belts. I use a lot of different grits, and you'll find it in your abrasive belts. They come in ceramic grits, cubic zirconia type grit, which is what I prefer to use on metal cutting. Aluminum oxide grits, which are okay to use for metal cutting, but I use those more for other materials. You really want to stick with your ceramic belts. They cut faster, they last longer, and when you're working with tool steels. Well, on my blade, on my wheel. And I'm going to start to hollow grind that out. As I get to the point, I'm going to move my right hand away from the wheel. I'm going to drag this out this way. Now I'm going to just kind of set that line. I'm going to set this line by holding that there and rolling the bottom of the knife in toward the wheel. And I'm going to start to grind a spot in there where I'm going to have a hollow out, and I'm going to start to develop where my plunge cut line is. This is a dropped point. It's what's called a drop point blade. Yeah, that's fine.
I want to forge it with the gun.
Cheese. Go ahead, take a bite.
Every cheese.
Milk cheese. So you can see the hollow has started to disappear already. Not a real flat surface. This doesn't end up being a real flat surface. It looks like a flat surface, but it's really not. It's very ridged, and it's kind of wavy this way. Sometimes it may be a little, like where I said I cut too deep in that hollow. I still got a little hollow in there. I'm going to just take out some of those 60 grit lines, kind of smooth it out a little bit. on both sides. Always watch your tracking on these 2x72s. You want to have your belt running right across the edge of that flatten, maybe overhanging just a tiny bit, not a whole lot. Paper, which is about where I left off on the 2x72. I think that's a 120 grit. I'm going to spin that wheel, and just a light dusting. That's all you need. This is a flat disc. I also have a 1-degree bevel disc, which is for, I use that on long knives. Go ahead, somebody asked me, why don't you buy the 9-inch discs that you can peel the back off and just stick them to the wheel? Is that what, who's thinking that right now? Why does this guy do that? Okay, well, you want to know why I don't do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dollars.
I don't, because this is cheaper, for one. And two, this gives me all these nice little pieces of sandpaper. He's looking at me like, what the hell do you do with those? Well, those are really good when you get into hand sanding. And when you need a little piece of sandpaper to sand on your handle with your knife, these are perfect. And these collect in a little pile in the shop. And eventually Liz throws them away.
Firehead.
But the next step here is find the knife.
Got it in your hand? Check your pocket.
Where is it, Angela? Here, I'm going to go up to my plunge cut, and I'm going to take it out. And the same thing is going to happen. I'm going to move away from my wheel as I get to the point. And I'm going to kind of roll this on that disc. And I'm going to start to smooth out that, define my edge. Get a little more shape in my plunge cut. And I'm working in the high range of this wheel as well. I'm working right now, I'm working at about 70-75%. This is going to make that one flat surface. The disc is what's going to get you that flat surface on there. And it's going to allow you to define that shoulder along here a little better. And I'm really pressing. I'm really pressing with my right hand. And that knife is getting hot. And this will eat up some sandpaper.
And skin.
So when that dries off, we'll heat it up again on top of it and then test it for temperature.
You're looking at how hot on your oil?
Your quench oil, and we'll get to this in just a second, should be between 120 and 130 degrees. If you're cooler than 130 and you're going to be too cold, you're going to quench your knife a little too fast. And it's going to finish my quench for me. I'm going to drop it in the oil. I'm going to take it out of the oil while it's still pretty darn hot, and I'm going to throw it in here, and I'm going to clamp that knife down like this. and I'm going to press it really hard. What this is going to do is going to do two things. It's going to complete my quench for me, and it's going to straighten that knife. So that if I got any warping in my quench, it's going to try to take most of that warping out for me. So I'm going to preset that to the right spot. Now, one talk about quenching. Most of the warpage comes from not dropping your knife into the oil perfectly plumb. Or from waving it around in there while you're quenching it. Don't do any of that. Don't grab this with a pair of tongs and put it in with the tongs, because you're going to go in at an angle. This side is going to start to quench before this side does, and that knife is going to warp on you. That's why I asked Dee for that piece of wire, which I know he gave me. Here it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of wire and I'm going to stick it through my last pinhole. And that's what I'm going to use when I drop my knife in. I'm going to drop it in just like that.
Now, Josh, how much of the grinding is done, or is there much more left before you
heat treat? No. This is it. We're at our heat treating. This is the rough grind is complete. We've got it fairly well shaped. We've got our center line done. We've got most of our bevels in. We've got our plunge cuts fairly well defined where we want them to be. This is it. We're going to take this after heat treat, and we're going to do a bunch more grinding on it. We're going to grind this again at 120, 220, 320, and 400. And then we're going to hand sand it. But those stages are going to go edge up in between those so that it will basically stand up on its back edge.
See that?
Oh, here, I tell you what. And when that gets done, when you get done looking at that, who's ever the last one to look at that? That goes to iron in the hat. 1465. 1465. You know, you're not off by a whole lot anywhere in there. 1455 up toward the end. A couple of thousandths off. It's all good. But if I look down the edge of this, I can see that that point is taking a hook that way. So I know I'm going to have to move my point over that way. So the next step to do is to finish your flats on this. And what I mean by flats is all this flat area here. I'm going to finish that to about 320 or better on the disc. And this is that surface grinding technique to use. You're going to be using your flat grinder. I usually grind with my edge up. Always grinding with my edge up. I have a big piece of foam rubber that I keep at home. I didn't bring with me, that I usually put right there. I'm just going to lightly hold this in here. I'm not going to press a whole lot. I'm just going to press that up against it. I'm operating at about 70%. Now, when I get past center, the other side is going to want to push that up. Pushing it up at me. This side is pushing my blade up. This side is pushing it down. That thing wants to go like this. And if you're not careful, it will whip it right out of your hand. And if you try to press too hard, reverse the motor and do the other side. And it's important to know what is going to be seen and what is not going to be seen. Because remember, we're going to be laminating this piece. Basically, all I'm trying to do here is get my edge geometry about an equal distance off of my center line and get my sides roughly about equal in terms of finish at 100 grit. Grit, I don't know how that translates. I have no idea what those grit markings mean on it. I've got an A45 and an A85. I think the A45 is actually a minor grit, and the A85, don't ask me why. I don't know. I thought the other one thinking it was finer than this one, and it's not. Looks nice and centered, nice and straight, and we can go to finishing the blade. So let's see, I think I finished on the belt. I'm going to work my faces. Only in metalworking is 220 a fairly coarse grit. You know, I was talking with some woodworkers guys, you know, and I was saying, oh well, you know, you're working fairly rough at that point. You're somewhere around 220. Woodworkers look at you like 220 is rough. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what do you consider fine? Oh, like 800. They're like, 800. You take a Q-tip with some Vaseline and you start smearing it in there with that, and that stuff will come off fairly easily. You can even scrape it off with a soft scraper or a piece of wood. A lot of that will come off. And then once it's all done, I wrap